So it's like almost, yeah, you're shaping that environment and able to
Yeah,
shape it to help coaches to work with their athletes and
yeah,
also to help you work with
yeah.
athletes and get the best out of athletes. Any other psychological areas to your model that
Well,
interest
the
or
model that I use for specifically monitoring and developing
yeah,
confidence probably came from one particular player. So I suppose to summarize the model, so I have four pillars,
yep,
and again, it was just all from trial and error.
just
But
coming from your experience of
yeah,
yep,
the first one was more. I use the word perspective probably the most, but some people generically would think of it as mindset. But the perspective piece we can speak about in a minute. But
yep,
that for me is a massive thing. Then the whole thing about how they send and receive feedback, or and again, some people would think communication, but for me, I think it's
feedback from a coach is really important.
yeah, and I think how people how open people are to receiving it, how
Yeah,
they process it,
yeah,
how they send it to us as well.
uh-huh.
And then there was the skill development piece, which is probably more generic coaching theory in
Yep,
terms of planning, performance process goals.
yep,
But then the fourth one was the experiences of the player, how they learn from their experiences, good and bad.
yeah.
How
So
to,
reflection.
yeah, how to, yeah, because that whole piece and the whole thing merges together. It's like the performance factors.
Yeah,
You can't speak about them in isolation. So that came from one player in particular who was a very good, let's say, very able. Was
heightened talented.
yeah, very yeah top in the country for years in GB for
Yep.
years and years, performing internationally at a high level, played junior Grand Slams and so on. And it was the first player that I'd worked with where my feeling was that their ability and their beliefs were completely opposite ends of the scale. So, and I know it'd
Meaning
be
that their beliefs on themselves were
low,
lower
yeah,
and
really
their
low. And I
ability
know
were
like
high.
we could speak a little bit, or it'd be good to get your experiences on the
Yeah,
gender difference. But if I was to be generalized, I would say that with girls, you spend a lot of your time trying to help them believe they're as good as they actually are.
hmm,
Whereas with boys, it's actually trying to their feet on the ground. So quite often, even when girls win, they can be very self-critical about their
it's really interesting.
performances.
Yeah,
Yeah, and boys are like if they win, they're just happy, and that's it. If their mates win, they believe that they could win because my mate wins. Whereas if a girl's friend wins, it's like why am I winning? They compare themselves negatively.
yeah. It's
Uh,
maybe more of a social aspect
yeah,
there. So in
yeah,
self-efficacy theory, you got this vicarious experience.
yeah,
No one really knows what that means, but
yeah,
it's
yeah,
comparing yourself with
yeah,
others. So you're
yeah,
looking at others and you're seeing how they're doing,
yeah,
and there's
yeah. So this
maybe it's more a
particular,
social thing with girls that
yeah,
they
perhaps I
tend to.
think she was particularly a social butterfly, but also
Mm.
you kind of got the feeling that if you gave her truth serum and said, would you rather your friend won than you kind of there was almost sometimes where you thought she would actually rather her friend won.
Ah, that's
You know,
interesting.
so that's quite an
Yeah,
extreme example, but that was the
yeah,
vibe. You know, it wasn't
yeah.
massive devastation when they lost.
Mm.
It was more, you know, but just the belief thing wasn't there. So I started to um, process all this and actually log it and record it. So things like recording
To
how
try and
she's
pick up on
performing.
trends and
Yeah, yeah. What were the common things that were coming out? So the first one was attaching the self worth to. I don't think naturally from her, but I think from other
yeah,
influences, naturally attaching self worth to winning, losing, or
yeah,
status level.
got you.
So that's why I'm so big on the perspective piece.
Yeah, so we can split that up into sort of your self-confidence,
Yeah,
which is around, I mean, you could even put it into the sport and
yeah,
say, it's your ability to execute and
hmm
do well in your sport.
yeah,
And then you've got you as your human being, which is kind of your self-esteem,
yeah,
esteem,
yeah,
which, shouldn't be affected so much by the sort of tasks you're doing in your
yeah,
sport. So,
yeah,
so let's kind of look at self-confidence as more around the actual task and the success in
yeah,
that and being
yeah,
able to do
yeah.
your sport. And then
Exactly.
your self-esteem is
Yeah,
more who you are as a
yeah,
person.
yeah. And there was no doubts, no grey areas in that respect in
Yeah.
terms of her as a person. But then when it starts to overlap,
Mm.
that's when the danger comes. So I spent a lot of time logging and all the stuff we were doing in training, and then started to really think about how we could bring that to the match court and vice versa,
Right.
or snowball it, if you
Yeah.
like. So that process, it took a few years, but to near the end of that, her time in juniors, she would actually almost run off the court and ask to see her stats. You know, she got so into it
Yeah.
that to know, like I always think that confidence is not hoping, wishing, praying. Confidence is knowing that you've done. It's like no matter what happens, I have that feeling that I know I can handle it.
Yeah.
You know, now.
And where does that come from?
Yeah.
That probably comes from all those past
Yeah,
experiences,
exactly.
all the successes that
That's
you've
it.
had,
Yeah, so that's why I thought,
your attributes you built up in that time.
yeah, the tangible stuff, you can't argue with it. So if I say to someone, Rick, you're currently sitting at 55% first serve percentage, that needs to be up 65%. If I then say you win 65% of the points on that, and you need to get that up to 75%. If we do 3 months work on it, and at the end of 3 months you're up to 78 and you win 80%, there's no hiding.
It's really
from
interesting
that.
because I wouldn't classify that as an outcome goal.
No.
I would class that as a performance goal,
Yeah,
but a performance goal that's kind of related to the process.
yeah,
So
definitely.
you're very much coaching the process, and it's not about the shiny glitter at the end or you know,
No,
the
definitely.
world ranking or you know.
And it's I'm torn with this one as well, because
Do you think it has to be a bit of both?
I think so. I think you have to have, like, because some people, when I say this and when I do the talks on confidence, people think, oh, it's like my peers, going back to my friends from years ago, that in that performance world, they go, you've gone soft. You know what I mean? You've lost your because I used to be very competitive, but in a caveman kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you're almost tougher.
Yeah.
Because if you're in control of what you're of all those processes and all that stuff, and you're accountable for your own processes, then that's cool. That's you.
Definitely.
And if anything happens outside, well, then that's not going to influence me. I'm going to be able to keep my confidence, keep my esteem.
Yeah, because what you mentioned a couple of minutes ago, that I would class that as outcome stats to fuel performance goals to then focus on process.
Yes.
I do believe that you need to have the outcome goals as well, in terms of just have a destination in mind.
The long-term goal for the season.
Yeah. And if it's just to keep, for me, it's like putting a rudder on the ship. That's all it is. It's like
setting a waypoint.
Exactly. And just knowing that you're going to go, you might go off course, or bumper bowling is another good analogy. It's like, I know I wanted to try and knock down the pins. I know they're that direction, but I might have the bumpers at the side, just keeping me on track. So I think you need that. I think to just go, it's all about process. It's all about process. I think you lose that part of your brain.
It's almost like you have to create a profile for the athlete. There has to be some sort of tangible measure of development and improvement.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is for the athlete, it might accelerate. It might plateau. It might go down. Like one step back, 2 steps forward.
But as long as you know, as long as you know that track, then you can go. It's fine. We're still on course.
Exactly.
It's good. And we both know that, you know, the setbacks are what make you refocus and reevaluate and whatever. But there has to be a plan in place for that to actually happen. If you just willy-nilly go and I'm just going to enter these tournaments and I'm just going to see what happens. People don't reflect after that type of mentality. They win, they're happy. They lose, they're not, and they get too emotional.
So that their ego, they're focused on the outcome. They've got the outcome. They don't really think about it. But what you're saying is this process, you can actually gain so much more from the experience.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, no matter, like, it is like
you've got all these sorts of information. So you give the stats, you'll have our internal feedback, you'll have feedback from
and even like the nth degree stuff in terms of the actual sport science, like using the heart rate monitors, using blood tests. It was all to prove you're on track, you're doing well. And every level that she jumped up was the same experience. It was, I doubt it, I experience it, I believe it, I can do this. I doubt it, I experience, believe it.
I mean, that's a core for self-confidence. You get that successful experience. You log it. I call it the confidence CV.
So
you can write out everything that they've done. But more importantly, you know, confidence should be, I lost the game last week. Well, my confidence is still, because I've seen the bigger picture and I understand how this game fits into.
Yeah, definitely. So that was where that model came from. And again, it was pure like a want and a need to help this particular player, and that's probably 13, 14 years ago now. And then the more I thought about it, and then the more I started to monitor and evaluate other athletes or people, I would start to see the trends surface as well. It was like the self-talk, the doubts, the willy-nilly, just like no pathway, no. It kills me. It's probably the one thing that I genuinely get infuriated with is when there's no strategic thinking, planning, goal setting.
It's almost very simple, but yet a lot of people probably don't do it, and it's so critical.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know what it's like in other sports, but in tennis it can be very guilty of people become coaches because they were good at the thing. You know what I mean? They were good tennis players,
and then it doesn't always translate.
Oh no, and they are doers in terms of they like to be on the court, but they don't want to be off the court doing the admin. So a lot of the consultancy work I do is actually educating people on the importance of this and actually giving them processes to go and complete.
You're taking your knowledge, your framework from your experiences, it's been built out inductively from the ground up, and you've created it. You're now using that as a vehicle to help educate others. So you can tap a coach into it, you can take an athlete into it.
Yeah, parents as well. It's big to educate them on it as well.
Parents too. Yeah. So it's almost like showing them a roadmap and saying, this is where you're going and pointing it out.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's the Aberdonian in me not wanting to waste time and effort, or money, but it really kills me, this idea that parents are spending X amount of time, energy, and a lot of money on something, and they're hoping that it's going to end somewhere. I'm like, no, you can plan this and know that the road is rocky, but you can plan this, and you can actually have indicators of where you're going, and you can have indicators of when you need to almost steer a completely different path. But it has to be done on a strategic level, not just a wing and a prayer.